Take a look at any other mammal on the planet, a chimpanzee, a wolf, a horse, even a mouse, and you'll find the same thing. A dense coat of fur covering nearly the entire body. Then look at a human being, standing there with almost no hair anywhere except the scalp, armpits, and a few other patches. Out of roughly 5,000 mammal species alive today, humans are one of the few that are functionally naked. That's not a small evolutionary quirk. It's genuinely strange, and it demands an explanation because fur isn't decorative in the animal kingdom. It's protective. It regulates temperature, blocks harmful UV rays, shields skin from injury, and helps many species survive extreme climates. So why would evolution strip that protection away from a species living in often harsh, unpredictable environments? The answer turns out to be one of the more fascinating detective stories in human evolution, pieced together from genetics, anatomy, climate science, and a surprising amount of parasite biology. The first thing to understand is that humans aren't actually hairless. This is one of the most common misconceptions about human evolution. We have roughly the same density of hair follicles as a chimpanzee, sometimes even more per square inch. The difference isn't quantity, it's type. Most human body hair is what's called vellus hair, extremely fine, short, and nearly colorless, essentially invisible compared to the thick, pigmented terminal hair covering most other mammals. So the real evolutionary question isn't, why did humans lose their hair, but rather, why did most human body hair shift from thick and visible to thin and nearly invisible? The leading explanation, and the one with the strongest scientific support, centers on one thing: heat. Specifically, the challenge of staying cool while being extremely physically active in a hot climate. Human ancestors, particularly early members of the genus Homo, living on the East African savanna roughly 1 to 2 million years ago, appear to have adopted a survival strategy built around endurance rather than raw speed or power. Unlike most predators, which rely on short, explosive bursts of speed, early humans likely specialized in something called persistence hunting, chasing prey over extremely long distances, sometimes for hours, in blistering heat, until the animal literally overheated and collapsed from exhaustion. This strategy required an incredible cooling system, because running for hours under a hot sun generates enormous internal body heat, and that heat has to go somewhere or the body will fail. This is where sweating becomes the centerpiece of the entire theory. Humans have somewhere between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, specifically eccrine sweat glands, which produce watery sweat capable of evaporating quickly off the skin. This is dramatically more efficient at cooling the body than the sweat glands found in almost any other mammal. Most animals rely primarily on panting to cool down, which works, but far less effectively during sustained heavy exertion. Humans essentially evolved into one of the best long-distance cooling machines in the entire animal kingdom. But here's the critical problem: thick body hair and efficient sweating don't work well together. Fur traps a layer of air and moisture close to the skin, which is fantastic for insulation, but terrible for evaporative cooling. If sweat can't evaporate efficiently off the skin's surface, it doesn't cool the body nearly as well. So for a species relying heavily on sweat-based cooling during long, hot pursuits, thick body hair became a liability rather than an advantage. Natural selection appears to have gradually favored individuals with less body hair and more functional sweat glands, individuals who could hunt longer, chase further, and survive heat stress that would have exhausted a more heavily furred competitor. Genetic research strongly supports this timeline. Studies looking at the gene responsible for skin pigmentation suggest that humans developed darker skin around the same period our ancestors were losing body hair, likely between 1 and 2 million years ago. This connection makes sense biologically. Once fur disappears, skin is directly exposed to intense equatorial sunlight, and darker skin, rich in melanin, offers crucial protection against UV radiation and skin damage. In other words, losing hair and gaining darker skin appear to be two halves of the same evolutionary adaptation. A package deal built around surviving a hot, sun-exposed, highly active lifestyle. There's also a second, less discussed, but genuinely compelling piece of this puzzle: parasites. Thick fur is an ideal environment for external parasites, ticks, lice, fleas, and various skin infections that thrive in dense hair close to warm skin. Reduced body hair would have meant significantly fewer places for parasites to live, breed, and spread disease. In a world without modern medicine, parasite-borne Illness could easily be fatal, so any evolutionary advantage that reduced parasite load, even a small one, could meaningfully improve survival odds over enough generations. Researchers studying this angle point out that many of humanity's closest evolutionary relatives, and some other mammals living in similarly warm environments, show reduced fur in specific regions prone to parasite buildup, suggesting this pressure may have worked alongside, not instead of, the cooling explanation. Body size and behavior likely mattered too. As early humans grew taller and adopted an increasingly upright, bipedal walking and running posture, their exposure to direct overhead sunlight increased compared to four-legged animals, whose fur-covered backs face the sun directly while their bellies stay shaded. An upright human exposes far less surface area directly to the sun at midday, meaning the overall heat load equation shifted, altering which combination of fur, sweat, and skin color actually worked best for survival. It's also worth mentioning what humans didn't lose: hair on the scalp. Head hair likely stuck around specifically because it protects one of the most heat-sensitive, vital, and vulnerable body parts, the brain, from direct sun exposure and overheating, while still allowing heat to escape from the rest of the body through sweat-covered skin. This selective retention makes far more sense as a deliberate evolutionary trade-off than as a random leftover. Once this fur reduction adaptation appeared, it likely created new challenges that reshaped human behavior entirely. Losing thick body hair meant losing built-in insulation against cold nights, unpredictable weather, and eventually colder climates as humans migrated out of Africa. This is widely considered one of major evolutionary pressures that pushed early humans toward inventing and relying on clothing, using animal hides, woven materials, and eventually tailored garments to replace the insulation fur once provided. In a real sense, clothing may have been humanity's technological replacement for the fur we lost, an external, removable, adjustable version of what nature once gave us permanently. Fire almost certainly played a supporting role as well. Once early humans controlled fire, they gained an external heat source that could replace at least some of the insulating benefits of fur, allowing survival in colder nights and seasons despite having thin, sweat-friendly skin. Shelter construction likely served a similar purpose, creating enclosed spaces that trapped warmth artificially. Together, clothing, fire, and shelter functioned as an external fur substitute system, giving humans flexibility that permanent thick fur never could. The ability to add insulation only when needed, and remove it completely during intense heat or physical activity. What's especially interesting is how this single adaptation, losing thick body hair, ended up connected to almost everything that makes humans distinct. Efficient sweating supported extreme endurance, which supported persistence hunting, which provided reliable access to protein-rich meat, which many researchers believe helped fuel the energy-expensive growth of larger human brains. Reduced parasite exposure likely improved general health and survival. The need for artificial insulation, clothing, fire, and shelter pushed early humans toward tool use, cooperation, and technological innovation far earlier and more urgently than might have otherwise been necessary. A change that seems purely cosmetic on the surface turns out to be tightly woven into some of the most defining features of human evolution: endurance, diet, brain growth, and technology. So the next time you notice how comparatively hairless human skin is compared to nearly every other mammal on Earth, it's worth remembering that this wasn't some evolutionary accident or oversight. It was very likely one of the most consequential survival adaptations in our entire evolutionary history, a trade favoring long-distance stamina, effective cooling, reduced disease exposure, and ultimately brain growth and technological innovation over the simple, ancient protection that thick fur once provided. Humans didn't just lose their fur, they traded it for something that, in the long run, turned out to be far more powerful.